Good morning. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for your attendance. I would like to address U.S. government announcements on March 4th regarding U.S. sanctions on individuals and entities in Zimbabwe. The United States is committed to upholding core values of respect for human rights and responsible, transparent governance. We have expressed and continue to have concerns regarding serious cases of human rights abuses and corruption in Zimbabwe. On March 4th, President Biden signed an executive order terminating the Zimbabwe Sanctions program, which has been in effect since 2003. That same day, the U.S. Department of the Treasury, Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, designated 11 individuals and 3 entities for their engagement in corruption and human rights abuses under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act. The United States is committed to ensuring our sanctions are timely, relevant, and targeted against individuals responsible for corruption and serious human rights abuses. In Zimbabwe, we continue to witness gross abuses of political, economic, and human rights. The targeting of civil society and severe restrictions on political activity have stifled fundamental freedoms, while key actors, including government leaders, have siphoned off government resources for personal gains. Sanctions on these individuals and entities do not represent a sanction on Zimbabwe or its public. The United States reaffirms its commitment to working with the people of Zimbabwe. This sanctions transition makes clear what has always been true. U.S. sanctions are not on the country of Zimbabwe. We are refocusing our sanctions on specific and clear individuals and entities. We continue to urge the government of Zimbabwe to take concrete steps to more open and democratic governance, including addressing corruption and protecting human rights. With that, I'll take a few questions.
Who has a question? The man in the red hat.
Thank you.
Can you introduce yourself, name, and locate your affiliation?
Thank you. My name is Nino Mune. I'm with newspaper.com. My question is, I think, most people have, why now? There seems to be no change since the last review. You are noting the human rights abuses, the corruption. So why now? Why the change now, specifically?
Thank you for that question. President Biden has determined that the authorities in the executive order that he signed that implements the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act is the best approach to address human rights and corruption concerns in Zimbabwe. The United States has made regular adjustments to the previous, now terminated, Zimbabwe Sanctions program, including adding and removing individuals based on available evidence. U.S. sanctions are not intended to be permanent. Our sanctions are most effective when they are up to date and reflect realities on the ground, and that's why we've made the change at this time.
Next question. Yes?
Thank you very much. My name is Tafazwa Nyikadzino. I'm from State of the Nation News. I just want you to give us maybe an overview of how effective has been the sanctions policy in Zimbabwe, especially on targeted individuals. Let me give you a little bit of context. The sanctions on Zimbabwe were introduced in the early 2000s, and one of the individuals who happens to be still on the list is President Mnangagwa. Back then he was the minister, but right now he's the president of the whole Zimbabwe. How have the sanctions been effective to ensure that he improves human rights records in Zimbabwe? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And yes, the 11 individuals and 3 entities sanctioned under the current Global Magnitsky designations are there for their flagrant human rights abuses and corrupt behavior. U.S. policy Our policy has not changed. Our policy on Zimbabwe supports the citizens in Zimbabwe and its democratic institutions. That has not changed. But this is a shift in approach. But it's consistent in our focus on corrupt actors and human rights abusers. U.S. sanctions are not intended to be permanent. One of the primary goals of U.S. sanctions is to bring about positive changes in behavior. That might take time. But we encourage the government of Zimbabwe, including members of the government named in these March 4th designations, to take concrete steps toward democratic reforms that they themselves have said that they seek. Next question.
Please.
Thank you. My name is Catherine Soro. I'm a freelance journalist. Are we likely to see the review of ZIDERA as a way of encouraging proper re-engagement between Washington and Harare? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think it's an important one that many people are asking. The Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act has not changed. But ZIDERA is not a sanction. We've never invoked ZIDERA to oppose international financial institution loans or debt restructuring. ZIDERA outlines a clear roadmap for government of Zimbabwe to access concessional financing and possible debt restructuring. But this could only happen once the government of Zimbabwe has paid its outstanding debt arrears to the international community. Messaging on ZIDERA might be catchy, but ZIDERA is not the problem. ZIDERA is not the cause of Zimbabwe's economic troubles. Decades of economic mismanagement and widespread corruption are, and they have directly caused lasting economic impacts. Next question.
In the yellow dress.
Thank you so much. My name is Lieutenant Mawere. There have been reports that the sanctions have aided corruption in Zimbabwe because the authorities or individual companies that have sanctioned they
pursue further action as necessary and appropriate.
Final question. The hand here. Sir?
Wallace Mushito from the Herald newspaper. You repetitively said there are no sanctions on the people of Zimbabwe, but how is that so when in the face of Zimbabwe under sanctions?
Thank you for the question. There are no sanctions on Zimbabwe or its public. I think it's important to realize that the security and the prosperity of a country is not dependent on one individual alone. And the 11 individuals and 3 entities that are now sanctioned under Global Magnitsky have been determined to be responsible for corruption and human rights abuses. But I want to leave you with this. We see this as an opportunity. We know it's an opportunity. We see it as an opening. This is an opportunity for the government of Zimbabwe to make good on the democratic reforms that it says it's committed to. We see it as an opportunity for business to have a new look at Zimbabwe. It was hard under a previous program titled the Zimbabwe Sanctions Program to get away from perceptions that you could not do business in Zimbabwe. That's not true. And so that we hope that business and financial institutions and investors have a new look at Zimbabwe's markets and connections with its people. But lastly, we see this as an opening for a constructive relationship between the people of the United States and Zimbabwe so that all 16 million people here have the opportunity to prosper. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We appreciate your timeliness. Have a good day.